Retro21 Studios podcast. I'm your host, M Squared. This is Season 2, Episode 2. If you didn't have a chance, check out Episode 1. We feature Allpeep and interview the CEO and founder, D'Angelo Sinat. Allpeep produced a decentralized social media platform that's really awesome. So take the time, listen to the podcast. He has a great story. So Episode 2, I have an interview with Kurt Schrader, the owner and founder of Shortcut. We recorded maybe a couple of months ago, so I'm really happy to get this podcast out. This is a workflow application. It's how you visualize your work when you're developing software applications. There's the key features, lots of integrations, a lot of familiar products here. GitHub, Slack, from a communications perspective, GitLab. There's the pricing. Of course, there's the free. That's enticing. You have an opportunity to actually set it up and work through the product. This is cool. Check out the Shortcut site. Take it away, Kurt.
Yeah, thanks. I think from a journey perspective, right? Shortcut is our app. Shortcut is an app that helps product and technology and engineering teams build great products. But it's really come out of my journey and a lot of the stuff I've done over time. And I started my career long ago as a consultant. You and I did some work together at one point many years ago, and we helped big companies, I think, get better. And really, my entire career arc has been trying to build things, trying to get better at building things, trying to build teams that are great at building things. And I spent some time with big companies. I spent some time with startups, helping build engineering teams and product teams from the ground up. And then 7 or 8 years ago, struck out on my own with my co-founder at the time. His name was Andrew Childs, and we really wanted to build something that was a great tool for engineering and product teams. We didn't think at the time that the tools that teams used to build things were very high quality. I think at the time Slack was a new thing, and it just showed us like, hey, you can build something better that's a work tool for teams to use that they'll really love using. And we started out from there and wanted to build something that helps you do your project management, your product management, tracking your goals in a way that teams would really love using. Went from there.
That's awesome. And Kurt, you mentioned that we worked with each other in the past. I wanted you to provide that thunder. Yes. In fair disclosure, yeah, we definitely had an opportunity to work on some really cool applications over the years. And I certainly learned a lot from those experiences. And when I take a look at Shortcut, I actually pulled down a demo version. There was a lot of what I was always looking for, right, when we were working in those environments and contexts. So it's really cool to see that manifest in your tool.
Yeah, totally. I think over many years, I've built up a lot of opinions about the best way to build products and build software products. And the place that we worked together for a period, ThoughtWorks, I think was a big part of that. We had a lot of opinions about the right way to do things, how to help people, not just from a business perspective, build better products, build things that were higher quality, but also help people do things in a sustainable way, help people understand how the work they're doing connects to the business, all those different pieces in there. And that's where I started from. How do we say, you've got a business, you want to move forward, here are sort of those high level goals. Somewhere down here, somebody is putting a button on a web page. How do those things really tie up and move the needle and move things forward? And that's really where we started out with Shortcut and wanted to build all that connective tissue to say, here's a bunch of projects, here's teams working on projects. Let's not just throw features over the wall. How do we help people see the work they're doing, the bigger picture? And then when they don't need to see that, sort of zoom in and focus in on the stuff that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there's strong integration from a product, business, and engineering perspective. So you mentioned that overarching view of seeing what's transpiring.
Yeah, for sure. We've built a lot of pieces and threaded them together to help teams really try to build products that drive better results. And I think those connections together are important. If you can zoom all the way out to the highest level and say, here are generally speaking, quarterly objectives, all the way into, the nuts and bolts of the work people do every day. I think that's where we really try to focus and do a good job on.
Oh, and that's cool because you start talking about quarterly objectives, taking that macro view. And in many of my experiences, it's been a matter of using multiple tools. You're either trying to piece something together, and at the end of the day, we're end up scrapping around with Excel, and even in some cases on the back of a napkin. Shortcut does a great job of bringing those together, just going through the demo. I'd love to get into some of the deeper levels of the tool and some of the finer grain aspects of it, but you could walk us through some of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And to your point, I think almost 90% of our customers were using spreadsheets, we're using things like that. So that's why we're just rolling out the objectives piece. Now we had a feature called milestones, which was people use as objectives, but you get lost. There's a spreadsheet. Nobody ever looks at it. So that's why we're pulling in that as at the top of the whole pillar. And then underneath that, we really think about things in terms of what's the roadmap? What are all the teams doing? How do you say team by team? And for us, team very much means like a classic Amazon 2-pizza team. So you've got 10 people, you've got them building out a piece of the thing you're building. How does it come together? What's their focus? What are they working on? You can see that at the roadmap level, ties up into the objectives. And then you can zoom in and say, hey, what's the actual work that's being done? Do you want to run 2-week sprints? Do you want to run Kanban? Like the process to us, I think is at that level is a little less important. Teams have a lot of opinions. If they don't, you can just jump in and get going. We have templates for things, but let teams work the way that they think is the best way to work, and then roll that up across the organization and show that progress and show how things are actually moving forward and putting things together there.
So, Kurt, what would be the approach? So you engage an enterprise and they have those spreadsheets. Maybe they have existing tools such as Jira, Rally, version 1. And oftentimes these tools are being used in different ways throughout the organization. How do you come in? How do you approach it? And then how do you unify it? How do you bring all that together?
Yeah, for sure. We just moved over a fairly big organization from Jira, spreadsheets, everything we just talked about there. And what we did was we took a couple of teams internally and said, hey, move your Jira projects into Shortcut. So we have a sync tool, we have an importer, those sort of things. So we did an import for a couple of teams. They started to work in Shortcut. They could see the work they're doing roll up into that roadmap and then feed into the higher level goals and objectives and milestones that they were working on. They did a few sprints. They did some time in there. We saw the value of having all the work in one place, making it easy for people to zoom in from. I think one example I use a lot is you can have your sales team, you can have your marketing team looking at the built-in roadmap across all of the teams and say, okay, in order for us to get our work done, we need to know how these things are going, when the teams think they're going to ship. We make it super easy to quantitatively and qualitatively show progress against all the things on your roadmap. And those teams can say, okay, I actually have a view of the world, and it's a real-time view. It's actually what's happening. I have one link to what's actually going on versus before they had a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet was updated intermittently, let's say, at best. And nobody really trusted it. Part of this is about trust and having that, seeing when it was last updated and also seeing real time what's actually getting done. So the team saw that. They saw for the rest of the organization starting to get pulled in, how they had visibility into what was going on for the first time, how that was tied up to the rest of their work. And then from there, they just rolled in the rest of their teams one at a time at first, and then all at once on a Friday for the rest of things. So everybody moved over. We imported sort of the history, and it gave that visibility across the entire organization as to what was happening and how it all tied together.
Awesome. So yeah, it sounds like you took on an incremental approach and started with that pilot team or that first team and started to progress to the others. So I know one of the things that I used to preach all the time with teams is that whatever you're working on is part of an overarching program, right? So we need that unified view. We're working off of the product roadmap. But from a upper management perspective, the word I used were self-harvest. to be able to go to a dashboard and the information is there at your fingertips. So I don't have to bug the project manager. I don't have to grab a developer to see what's transpiring. Obviously, we'll have our sprint reviews or iteration reviews, those sorts of things. But if I just need that data at the snap of a finger, those dashboards are available. And so those capabilities or features are central to Shortcut.
Yeah, totally. And we're rolling out a new version of the dashboards and new objectives over the next couple of months because that's really it, right? If the way you get an update on the roadmap or the way you get an update on your OKRs is to go, it's not just bug one person, right? There's a whole circle of life around who you have to bug, and you don't even know on some of the teams, right? Is it the engineering manager? Is it the design manager? Is it the product manager? You've got that triangle of people. Are you going to go bother all three of them? It's never totally clear unless you say, hey, every day at this, or every week, excuse me, at this time, like everything should be updated. If it's not, you can poke the person who updated it last time and say, hey, what's going on here? And that pulls that information as well as shows you this epic or this feature that we're working on has 35 stories in it. 20 of them are complete. So you can see the qualitative, you can see the quantitative. It pulls up, that rolls up into the objectives piece, and it's all just there. You just need one link, I think, to your point, because I think the thing that you preach there, I used to preach as well, but in my experience working with, we have thousands and thousands of customers. Not many of them do that. So that's why we're trying to build this out to surface everything around it.
Yeah, there's always that exercise of reinventing the wheel each time. Yeah. From a competitive perspective, so we mentioned Jira and some of the other tools. What differentiates Shortcut from those tools?
Yeah, I think it's really a couple things, right? It's pulling in the rest of the organization. In my experience, the Jira and the Rally and those kind of tools live in a bubble, right? And they're here. You've got something on top of it that is maybe your OKRs, maybe your roadmap. Those generally are also other tools. Like we've said, spreadsheets, they're different things. You try to keep maybe your sales team out of Jira because they don't know what's happening and they're going to mess something up and they don't know where to go. They're trying to find status and they're commenting on things. So what we've tried to do is holistically pull people in. And I think the other day, I got a good comment from one of our customers who I was talking to who said, hey, you guys call things epics and stories. We started from a very engineering focused background. And he said, this terminology isn't great, but because we can pull everyone in, we run our marketing team next to our engineering and product teams in the tool, because then everything's in one place. We can see how everything ties together. And I think we are, other than homegrown things, like I think we're the only tool that I know of where you can do that sort of thing. It's engineering and product focus, but it brings in the rest of the organization and lets everyone see the big picture across everything.
That's awesome. So what's the cost of entry? So if I wanted to use Shortcut, experiment with it, and see if this is something that's going to work with my organization, could I experiment with it? Could I call you guys in and guide me along? How does that work?
Yeah, I think it depends on where your organization is now, right? Like we see two or three different entry points. One is, hey, I've got a startup, I've got a small company, we're 10 people. We've been using Trello, we've been using a spreadsheet, we've been using Post-it notes on the wall. None of these things are particularly scalable. And from that, the way we usually start with a team like that is to set up one team. They can sign up themselves. It's pretty easy to onboard yourself. We've done a lot of work on that over the years to say, just dive in, get started. You can import Trello, you can import Jira, and import CSVs, different things like that to get started with if you have some stuff already there. But there's like kind of a self-service piece there to get started. Now, as you grow, we run into companies that 50, 100 people that have been using Asana, have been using Jira, maybe somebody set it up a while ago. We have A's in-house who can help you and account managers who can help you get started, get moving on things, help you with the imports, set things up and set you in the right direction. Because I think one thing that we've seen is we have an opinion around around the best way to build product. And we've built a tool to support that. And if you get on the right trajectory from the beginning. It scales really well with your teams. It works really well. If you get started and head in the wrong direction, or at least a direction that we haven't really built for, it's like running the wrong way on a treadmill, and it never really works. So if we can be in there, especially with, hey, I've got 5 teams, I want to use Shortcut, we help those people get started and point it in the right direction to move forward from there. So that's where we onboard people there. And obviously for larger organizations, when you have hundreds of people, we're even more hands-on a lot of times. There's integrations that need to be built. We work together with you to move you over and help you build your team up from there.
Oh, that's fantastic. So we talk about methodologies. We've talked about Agile. And so is this tool just relegated to Agile? When I say that, obviously there's a variety of flavors. Some organizations are using SAFe, some are strictly Scrum, and maybe there's some others, hardcore XP. Whatever it is, the tool able to accommodate the various methodologies?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be careful here because, yes, generally speaking, right? SAFe is a thing that we could probably do a whole nother podcast on with its 45 different options of things that happen. We've done a lot of work to support Scrum, to support Kanban, to support different product development methodologies, your sprints, your iterations, weekly check-ins, things like that, because we think that's a proven way to build product, but we're not super dogmatic about it at that level, right? Like we see teams, we want to give people flexibility. So when you show up, it'll be set up for sprints, 2-week sprints, write some stories, put them in. This is what we're going to get done over the next 2 weeks. Let's retrospect on things. Let's move forward from there. If you want to turn off sprints and just run a Kanban process, you can do that. Work in progress limits is something we haven't built, but we are building soon. So it'll fully support, I think, that's the last thing for a real Kanban team to work the way they want to work. Generally speaking, we're redoing some other pieces there to accelerate stories through the pipeline, that sort of thing. But you can do most anything you'd want to do from any process perspective, because we want to, if you've got 5 teams, if you've got 10 teams, especially even us internally, right? We've got teams that want to work in different ways, especially around the edges. And I think what I've seen over time is teams generally adopt some version of Scrum and then they modify it to work best for the way their team works.
Right.
And we want to make sure that they can make it easy for them to adjust. Because to me, the core of agility really is working the way that works best for your team or your teams as you grow into it. And so I think a lot about sort of small A agile, not big A agile, not agile approved. We're going to do this thing. It's here's some best practices. Let's pull them together and figure out what works best for your teams.
Yeah, I love that because you have the hardcore dogmatic, the capital A, right? And I think you lose a lot from that perspective. Whereas with the smaller A, you have the arrows in your quiver and you use them as needed.
Yeah.
Kurt, is it possible to? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say part of that too, and it's something that I learned, and I think thought a lot more about over the years is really around, I think, trust in your teams. I think it's very easy to weaponize a lot of the things that a lot of these processes that some of us, I think, used in the past, believed in the past. I think at this point, from what I've seen, like if you can trust your team, you can give them some constraints, give them some guide rails, but then you trust them to get their work done, to do things the best way, to say, hey, these are the things we're building. These are the metrics we're trying to move. We'll tell you like how things are going, and we'll tell you the bad news. We'll tell you the good news. Make it easy for that to happen. And I think that's when teams do their best work and get things done.
Oh, that's super cool. What other, so it's you mentioned WIP, work in progress, and some of the features that are on the horizon. So if we were to look at a roadmap around Shortcut, what other areas are you delving into? Is there AI involved? Is there AI on the horizon? That's the buzz right now, for better or worse.
Yeah, I think right now we have this concept of milestones that we're turning into full objectives, OKRs, things that we've been talking about. That's rolling out right now as we speak. There's some quote unquote boring stuff around reporting that we're doing to really help teams understand what's going on, where they're doing well, where they're slowed down. We've been looking at a lot of AI things. I think we've seen a lot of gimmicks in the tools that we use. And by gimmicks, hey, AI, right? Here's just ask the AI to show you a graph from the data, and it doesn't work, and then people don't trust it, and you're like, okay, what was not built because we tried to build this thing? I think one thing we're actually spending a lot of time on that we're excited about is helping teams understand what's happening, right? Like a lot of what we built Shortcut for is to say, hey, we're making progress. These are the things we're building, but it's still difficult. And I'm sure you've been there, and I think probably a lot of people listening to this have been there, to say, hey, okay, the team is building a feature, they're building something on a roadmap. What's actually happening? Where are the conversations? Where are they stuck at? And we were doing some work around, originally it was around thinking about like, how do you summarize, hey, here's all the stories that got done in the last, I've been out of the office for 2 weeks and what has happened in the last 2 weeks and summarize that. I think as we dig into it more, it's almost like what are the right questions to ask has become like AI can help a lot with not giving you the answers, but saying, here's what we think's been going on. Hey, it seems like there's in Slack, the team has been talking about something for a week and a half now. There doesn't seem to be an answer or a decision made, right? Like, how do you dig into that direction and say, hey, what's going on with this thing? It seems like we're stuck here and pull out some of the questions. And I think we're seeing some interesting results with that early results. So we've got some big projects we're finishing up. We're going to put some people on this soon. But yeah, I think just when you think of the core of Shortcut, it's about progress. It's about showing how you're moving the needle. And like the easier we can make it for people to see what's happening and understand that progress, the better. So that's where kind of we're focused on the AI side of things and more to come there soon, probably in that Q1 of next year is what we're looking at.
Oh, that's awesome. I really like the fact that you're talking about something that will actually provide value. And you mentioned some of the gimmicky type stuff because it's easy right now just to put something out there to say, hey, it's run by ChatGPT or we're some sort of AI baked in. And at the end of the day, you're like, is it actually useful? And just what you described is really cool. And I definitely look forward to that functionality. Sounds very helpful. And it falls in line with that self harvest that I was mentioning earlier. That'd be
Mm-hmm.
cool, right? You pull up a dashboard, but how about some additional insights and data around the visuals? And it sounds like what you guys have in store will provide that.
Totally. And it's the sort of thing where, one of the use cases we've been thinking about is, hey, I've joined this team. I'm new. I just got hired here, or I was working on something else. I've joined this. There's always, you know, a bunch of things in flight, right? Like, how do I take that onboarding of, hey, it's going to take me days or maybe even weeks to understand everything that's going on and say, compress, right? This is the thing I'm working on. Catch me up, right? This project's been going on for 3 weeks. Catch me up. And I think it's just the more you can do that, the same thing if those people are on vacation, right? Or anything. I've gone for 2 weeks. I come back. What's happened, right? Like those things for the core users, right? I think a lot of
Right.
the AI things I see are release notes, right? Which is interesting, but that's like an externally facing thing that doesn't really help your team move faster. We're focused on the users and how we can help them really understand what's going on.
Now, how about under the hood, Kurt? So if we're looking at code throughput, code to production, the whole DevOps space, that last mile, is there any tracking from that perspective? How's that working?
Yeah, so we have integrations with some tools. We integrate with a tool called Linear B, and some of our customers use that. And there's some other things we're working on in that space. I think we've done some experimentation. I think it's different enough that um, it's probably better for, generally speaking, a third party to handle it. Never say never, but we've been pushing a lot of that the the code stuff to partnerships because we just haven't. It's easy to lose focus on the important things, and we've been the, really focused on status and moving the team forward, and the engineering specific stuff I think is a little overly specified for us right now. And I think there are a lot of companies out there doing a great job. The Linear Bee, Jellyfish, Code Climate, a bunch of friends of ours are doing stuff there. So we've been pushing that off at least for the time being.
No, it's interesting you say that because there's no shortage of tools in the engineering space and the DevOps space. There's been lots of movement in that arena. And I think historically, when we're talking about agile methodology and delivery of product, it's been heavily focused around the dev tools and dev centricity, if you will. Whereas this, to your point, has that nice mix of product, the folks who are actually developing it, a more human side of the development process.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there is that, it's all levels of layers of abstraction, right? Like most of our customers use GitHub to keep their coding. Yeah, we use GitHub, right? We're not going to build that piece, but we have integrations where, when you open a pull request and associate it with a story, that moves your story over to a workflow state where it needs to be, right? Like all the pieces come together to make it easy, hopefully for engineers to do their work and do less work about work, but still make sure the status view is real time updated. So I want to make that as easy as possible. But yeah, like really thinking about those human interactions, right? Like how does design work with product? How does product work with engineering, right? Like all those things I think are harder but also more interesting. And if you can solve them, that's I think how you have a really high performing organization.
Excellent. And my apologies to the engineering, the folks on the DevOps side who are saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm human. So,
I have an engineering degree. I used to write code. I know how this is. Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. Kurt, what are some of the other areas that you're involved with? I'm sure that Shortcut takes up a lot of your day-to-day. What else is on the horizon for Kurt Schrader?
Yeah, startups always are all consuming to some extent, right? And I try to carve out and spend time with my family. I have an 8-year-old daughter. We do a lot of skiing, so that's coming up. Looking forward to ski season again and doing some things there. Try to do some running to keep myself sane. I tend to try to carve out an hour or two a week to help smaller startups, people just getting started, small CEOs get off the ground and work through problems with them. So I take calls and do that sort of thing. I don't know how I've backed into that, but I spend a lot of time talking to people. I think it's a lot of fun. Like you get to meet a lot of great people and they have a lot of problems that I feel like I've seen before. So do a little coaching and mentoring there and occasional investment in small things that I'm interested in. But it's 110% of your time all the time for a startup, and I don't think it ever gets any easier. So try to find time for other things, but definitely spend most of my time thinking about this.
Excellent. I appreciate you taking the time to share your perspectives and provide us with some insight around your product, Shortcut. It sounds exciting. I'd certainly use it. As a matter of fact, I think my demo ran out, so I need to pull it back. Because
There's a free version. Use the free version. Or I'll take care of you, man. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. And I'd love if you would come back on the show, provide some updates as far as you work through the roadmap, any compelling stories. Feel free to give me a buzz and we'll bring you right back on.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for joining the Retro21 Studios podcast. I'm your host, M2E2. Take care.